Some of the most impressive images ever taken are of nebula. Nebula just have a wow factor that few other interstellar objects have. Nebula are always unique and are always breathtaking. Nebula are massive gas clouds that are mostly made out of hydrogen, helium, and dust. They can form from the leftovers of a past supernova, or they could form from material left over from the Big Bang itself. But normally, nebula are a combination of gases from the Big Bang and from past supernova. The word nebula comes from Latin, where its translation means cloud or mist. The term was first used to describe nebula in the 1700s, although the first observation of a nebula came a couple hundred years before in 964 CE, when Persian astronomer Abdi al-Rahman al-Sufi wrote about a little cloud in the region of the sky where the Andromeda galaxy sits today. Interestingly, nebula are not very dense at all. They are anywhere from 100 to 10,000 parts per cubic centimeter. For reference, Earth on average has 2.5 times 10 to the 19 particles per cubic centimeter. That means a nebula is over 1 trillion times less dense than Earth's atmosphere. Nebula are only marginally more dense than the vacuum of space itself. Nebula are only opaque to certain frequencies of light because of the massive scale of these gas clouds. They are normally hundreds of light years long. The scale of a nebula is incredible. They can be absolutely massive, the largest being the Tarantula Nebula. This nebula is an insane 1,800 light years long at its longest span. Nebula are essentially massive star nurseries. They are where new stars form. These stars form when a part of the gas begins to collapse and become denser. Once a larger density of mass begins to form, the growth becomes exponential. A great demonstration of this is a test NASA astronauts performed on the ISS. They used a microgravity environment to prove this theory. To perform this test, they used a bag filled with salt. They shook the bags, then observed the behavior. The results were as predicted. At first, random chance allowed for an uneven distribution of mass, which eventually collapsed into a single structure. This theory doesn't just describe how stars form, but also how the planets formed. Infrared imaging allows us to see deeper into nebula, revealing newly formed stars. Protostars. These protostars often form in clusters. This is why most star systems are multi-star systems. When stars start to form in a nebula, this usually marks the beginning of the end for the gas cloud. The winds from the stars will start to push away the material and dissipate the cloud. Supernovae also contribute to the death of a nebula, especially since large newly formed stars have an incredibly short lifespan. Although the supernova of massive stars often leads to the death of a nebula, they also can contribute to the nebula, or create their own nebula called a planetary nebula. When a star collapses, it produces the heavier elements of the periodic table. This is the primary source for these elements within the universe. Without these elements, life could not exist. The heavy elements found within your own body came from ancient supernova. In Carl Sagan's words, we are made out of star stuff. What I always find interesting is how people separate themselves from the universe at large. They observe the universe as a different object entirely and forget that they are part of the universe in the process. Since you made it to the end of the video, here's a collection of the most beautiful nebula I could find. Also, thank you for watching.